Hello, everybody. I'm Jason from So Percussion, and this is another episode of our Brooklyn Bound podcast. And I'm very pumped. We're getting ready for our November 12th show. It's Thursday at 7 p.m. We'll be watch partying on YouTube and other spots. And we're playing some music from an awesome composer who is joining me right now, Finola Merivale. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Anytime. Actually, we should just do it every day. We'll come to Zoom at this time, and we'll just hang. I'm gonna count you, like I was saying, as my new friends that have been made on Zoom. You know, can't wait to actually, drink a beverage with you in person. But this is gonna do for now. As I was telling you, we been having fun talking with folks and asking them basically the same questions. And the first one is the broadest and maybe most annoying of all questions. Um, I know you as a composer. I don't know much about your background in terms of if you're an instrumentalist or anything. Like, what is your story from, your first beginnings and excitement about music to your path to kind of to becoming a musician?
Yeah, I started piano when I was about 4, so music's always been a really big part of my life, and I always loved playing piano, but I never actually considered a career in music, and I never wanted to be a performer. It just never kind of was something that I was really drawn to, even though it was always something I enjoyed. And I started an undergraduate degree in drama and theatre studies. And I was actually acting a lot in my sort of teenage years, and that was the direction I thought I was going to go in. But I did drama and music together. And through the drama degree, started making sound designs for these shows that I was part of. And then, sort of with encouragement from my drama friends, people directing shows, they were like, why don't you just like compose something for the show if you're doing the sound design anyway? And that's how I actually started composing, and realized I was way more excited by that than acting, which I was like still doing a little bit
Mm.
of. And
When is it? How old are you when you started to
like
do these sound designs? This is high school or college or?
19, no, 19 or 20.
Nice. Okay.
So it was like
Cool.
already during my undergraduate degree. And yeah, then started taking lots of composition courses then, and learning a lot about contemporary music. So it was through contemporary music that I really got very excited about composing. Went off to do a master's when I was 21 in University of Leeds in the UK. And then took a few years out. I actually moved to Hong Kong and taught English for a couple of years, but I was composing the whole time. Um, and went to the Bang on a Can festival when I was 25. Um, from Hong Kong, and I went over there, and that was when I just like met so many amazing performers and started thinking about like graduate school in the US so that I could like come back and keep working with all of these performers that I had
Mm.
created these great collaborative relationships with. And yeah, now quite a few years later, I've been living in the States now for 5 years. I'm in graduate school at Columbia, so I study with George Lewis and Georg Friedrich Haas and Zasha de Castri, and they are all incredible teachers. And I love living in New York, or I did. I'm not there at the
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
I
in
will
the
be
normal
back.
times, yeah.
So yeah, that's
Oh,
kind of in a
that's very
nutshell how
cool.
I've ended up doing what I'm doing.
I love so much about that story. My sister, I have a sister who's 10 years older than me, and she moved to Japan to teach English
Oh wow!
in 1989. But then she never came back. Like
Oh
her
really?
story like, yeah, like I love that. I like kind of grew up thinking like, oh, sometime it'd be great to go abroad, and that's
Yeah.
like an awesome way to do it. But then the Bang on a Can story is just so happy. I love these stories of just meeting such a kind of exciting, tight knit group of performers at a festival, and you hear it around Banglewood so often, that you make these
Yeah.
connections that you still have.
Yeah. And it
Um,
was, 2013 now, so it's been quite a few years. And Carl Larson, who's a pianist I met there, like literally this week, I'm finishing up a piece for him that's being premiered soon. And just so many of the people I still work with are people that I met back then. So it's
I
a
love
really
that so
great
much.
community.
Yeah, well, I think I was telling you because at our summer festival we played your music this summer, and I
Yeah.
feel like for us, like Bang on a Can is such an example like that, where more and more I think about like all the cool groups, meeting folks, we're meeting performers, meeting composers at our summer festival, just how awesome and
Yeah.
important that is. And that's not something, I feel like for me, that's been like a middle age realization. Like I feel like I didn't think about the importance of those kind of tight knit communities
Yeah.
being like just so, I don't know, kind of what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that part of the story.
Yeah.
Um, and so the before we talk about what music is played on Brooklyn Bound, I realize, um, I've started to work on this piece of yours, Falling Flames, in quite a number of scenarios now, and I'm completely, as a composer and a performer myself, I'm so drawn to what flexibility can be in composition, and when you can open things up for the performer, and when you need to say no, this is, my vision needs this, and the more I get into your piece, the more I'm just like, the large scale form of it is so strong that it feels like an unbreakable piece. You know what I mean? Which to me, like, I don't, is just like the highest compliment I feel like I can, like, it's like what I strive as a composer, right? To like write something that like you can have a transcendent performance, but also if you have a mediocre perform, like it still works. It's like such a solid structure. So with your music in general, do you approach many pieces with this kind of flexibility, or do you kind of skate back and forth in your work between much more structured pieces and more open pieces?
I think I go back and forth. I actually wrote this piece when I was in Hong Kong. It was one of the first ones I wrote after the Bang in a Can festival, and I wrote it for a marimba concert, but I
Mm.
always felt like this is a large ensemble piece, or I always like wanted an ensemble version, and it took years to actually do that. And then
Mm.
suddenly in the last couple of years, I'm all these different ensembles are playing it, and it's so exciting because that sort of freedom in it means I'm always surprised.
Yeah.
Like there's always something new and really beautiful in it. And like Stony Brook Chamber Music Players played it a couple of years ago, and I got to the concert and someone wheeled out a huge gong, but I realized the violinist was playing it, and I was like, "Wow, what piece is that for?" She was like,
Yeah.
"You."
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was really exciting. So I love the fact that I can be surprised, but that it's still a very distinctive piece. It's like it always sounds like Falling Flames,
Yeah.
but because of the open instrumentation, and the fact that you could have an hour-long version or a 5-minute version. Actually, I think I specify at least 10
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was writing quite a lot of pieces that had a lot of freedom in the score, and it's something I really love to do. And now that we're having this conversation, I've realized I haven't actually done that in a while, but it's still definitely a big interest. Like I have a piece for violin and electronics where the whole score is just one page, and it's like
Mm.
these little um, sort of gestures, and the violinist sort of improvises around them and uses Ableton to sort of loop things and add some more effects that way. So I have a few pieces like that, but yeah, not so many recent
Yeah, well,
ones.
I find like I understand that too, kind of going back, and then in this weird moment of isolation and remote music making, it feels like flexibility becomes such an awesome gift, because it means that there's more opportunities for folks to get into the mix, I
Yeah.
think. Um, so you wrote the piece for Alex Petku, is that right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, an amazing percussionist in Ireland.
yeah, we know him a little. We were on New Music Dublin. I
Dublin?
don't know if that is that what it's called?
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and played some music with him, and knew him from out there. Did you know each other from, was it Bang on a Can that you guys met, or was it from Ireland?
No, we knew each other
From
from
Dublin.
Ireland. That was part of a Irish Composers Collective concert,
Mhm.
which is a group of really sort of younger composers, like in their early 20s ish. I mean, I hate putting age, but sort of emerging
Yeah.
composers, and they would always have a few concerts each year. So it's something a few years ago that I was part of, and that was one of my concerts with them.
Very, very cool. So I feel like I asked the question in such a framing it with what's actually happening on Broken Bound. I probably should have zoomed out and asked the question more broadly, like, um, in terms of your practice as a composer, what are you interested in when you sit down to write a piece of music? Like, what's your practice, or what are your interests in composition in the broadest? way?
I feel like 6 months ago I had my answer,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, right.
everything I'm writing has suddenly really changed. The last few years I've been writing like really sort of generally like very intense, loud, high energy. I love this idea of like sort of these pieces where the performers hardly get a break, although that's
Yeah.
I mean the performers seem to enjoy it. But you know, like this really high energy where like I kind of want to feel like at the you can't sort of take a breath until the end of the piece.
Mm.
And a lot of stuff was influenced by things like climate change or my own sort of personal experiences with sexism. So it was always, not always, but more recently, sort of reflecting on issues like that. And suddenly in lockdown, I'm writing really slow, slow, slow music.
Mhm.
I wonder why. I
Yeah.
only realized this about a month ago. I was like finishing up a duo for violin and cello. And yeah, it's like really slow and has a melody. I'm like, this is not
Where did
me at
this come
all.
from? Yeah.
But I guess in these scenarios, everything changes.
It would almost be weird if it didn't change, you know?
Yeah.
And like, right? Like, I mean, I haven't been self-reflective in that way exactly yet, but to see it so starkly for yourself, it feels like actually if you were still just writing the same music you were in March, it almost would be like, well, wait a minute. Like what am I writing music in relation to anything? Like,
Yeah.
or like what's my yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So then to get to so on Brooklyn Bound, we're
Mhm.
programming. So is doing a kind of remote recorded version of Falling Flames, along with some students of ours at Princeton. This year we started a remote ensemble at Princeton
Oh, cool.
to kind of work in the same way as Zoe's been working, which has
Mhm.
mostly been kind of these, remote recorded kind of collaborations. But with this piece, so it's, oh, I almost feel like, yeah, I do. Ha ha ha! I got it right on my stand because
Oh, nice. Oh,
I
that's
don't.
even more.
Yeah, I was
Now
just.
I
I
have like a
was.
2-page version. It's a bit bigger.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I love how concise, that like, I mean, there's an instruction page, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like there's so much just like looking at the score, there's so much you can get about the large shape, like how how busy it is up here, how it like, how there's how high to low. Like I feel like there's so much you get about the large shape. Um, but so as I've said that I feel like, um, writing unbreakable music is such a goal. Have you heard versions of this where you were like, wait a minute, like I wish I was a little more clear. That Tam Tam looked like a good idea, but then why, or like, the kazoo choir version didn't quite get it, do what
Um,
I thought I was gonna do.
yeah, it's funny. I'm still surprised, and I think I've decided what it needs, and then changed my mind again. Like certainly at the beginning, there were a few performances where in the old version or like my old instructions, I said so the performers, I should explain for anyone who doesn't know what
Yeah,
happens is like
please, yeah.
every performer reads the music from beginning to end, but repeats all these cells and moves on sort of when they feel they should, but they have the freedom to jump back at any time. So they have the freedom to kind of, if the mood is changing, they have the freedom to like interrupt that. But they can never like jump forward to stuff that hasn't been played before. That's the sort of rule. But I did realize I did make it that once you sort of are nearing the end, like those last sort of two systems on the page, that you stop jumping back. Because it was interrupting it a bit too much, and then sometimes it would end with the beginning again, and I kind of didn't want that. I wanted it
Mm.
to move on. I started thinking it works really, really well with percussion. So I was really glad when you took it on and we're doing it
Mm.
with your at the institute this summer. But then I got an Izzy Gleischer, who's a fantastic flutist who plays with Ice, amongst other,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
international contemporary ensemble, amongst other things. She emailed me a few months ago and she was like, "Can I do this with 16 flutes?" And she's like pre-recorded it. It's like 4 piccolos, 4 altos, C flute, and bass, and
Wow.
it's incredible. And she put like
Totally.
an ostinato, sort of a rhythmic piano line as well at the beginning, and a few like random house solos. Again, she just went around her house, found some like household percussion, and it's incredible. It's really like hypnotic. I just absolutely loved what she did. So after deciding, like, I think this piece works best with percussion or
Right.
like keyboard and percussion, then Izzy did this incredible version that I adore.
That's
So
so cool. I want to check out that version. We played some music with her down in DC, um, some Lou Harrison music for flute and percussion.
cool.
And she was awesome. That was the first time I had got a chance to meet her. I would love to hear that
She's
version.
amazing. Yeah, I'll send it
Um,
to you.
like in some ways, I've so you'll hear on Thursday, or if you're not still awake by the time it streams on Thursday, you can hear after Thursday. Like I've been really excited. I feel like my instrument is percussion, but really like my home base is drum set. Like I really like that. I just feel at home on a drum set. And it's been interesting with like kind of there's a lineage, I feel like, for so in terms of like these more flexible open instrumentation pieces, Terry Riley's NC being a big one,
Mhm.
um Joyce Eastman's Stay On It, being one, Andreessen's music, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of some rhythmic ones where I could play drum set. Like of course there's many,
Mhm.
Cage or Pauline Oliveira, like some more open one, but like the kind of driving drum set ones. And I had never, when I first learned about a lot of that music, I had never heard it with drum set and didn't feel like that was necessarily okay. And then through working with folks have felt some permission with that. So I've gotten really excited on different versions that we've been doing to play some drums. But then I've also, the way you described all these flutes, like I almost feel like I've really enjoyed versions of this piece that we've been doing where there's almost like a pairing, like a Noah's Ark kind of vibe, like where you
Yeah.
have the same instrument playing off of each other,
Mhm.
because it's so cool to hear the interplay.
Yeah.
So we've been going back and forth whether there's going to be one or two of me on Thursday night, like whether there'll be kind of like a panned drum set thing that speaks to each other,
Oh, that would be
um,
amazing.
playing off of these rhythms,
Yeah.
or whether it's just So we'll see. But it's been interesting to find my way into this music, playing the rhythms as you've written, but playing them on unpitched percussion.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm putting that out there so that you're not
No,
surprised
I
in the
love
moment.
that.
If you speak up on YouTube and you're like, "Who the heck is grooving in this moment? That's weird." It's me.
Now I'm gonna be really disappointed if there aren't two of you.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we need two. I do as well. I'm trying to. We've done, which has been so phenomenal. We've done just many different versions, so it's been cool to try to go about it in different ways because I feel like you learn something each time.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I
yeah,
loved what the version this summer, and there was like visuals with it as well. And
yeah,
it was a video artist, and I loved that. It was really
yeah. It
sweet.
was cool. If all goes right, there's gonna be also another student who came out of SOSI. There were so many creative video artists who were musicians at our
Oh
summer
wow.
institute,
Yeah.
and so we've commissioned a video for Thursday. I say commissioned. We've scrounged up an honorarium for a friend to do an awesome video. So we'll
Yeah.
fingers crossed. That one was really cool though. I know he worked with these lo-fi video kind of where you plug in the sound and it kind of
Mm.
translated it in these it was the pink one with all the lines, right? The
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
lines. Yeah. Yeah, I have no video art skills, and it's been amazing to see what some of our students have kind of have gotten to.
And I feel
But
like now, because we're all sort of everything's online, it's really nice to add these elements to it. And I think now's
totally,
the time that people are getting really creative with that aspect of things.
totally. Yeah. So again, cross
Mhm.
finger. I can't wait to show you what we've been working on. I think it's
Yeah,
it's
I
really
can't wait.
it's
I'm gonna
it's really
stay
really fun.
awake. It'll be like
Um,
1 a.m. my time, but I'll stay up.
Perfect. That would be amazing. Well, before we move on to some of our last questions, I'm just curious because I feel like I've glossed over some of your composition work. You're saying you have a new piece you were just finishing for violin and cello,
Yeah,
um, and did you also mention that a new piece for Carl Larson?
yeah. So since I got to Paris, I've written a lot, which is great in the sort of current world that we're living in. I'm glad that I actually managed to, I don't
Yeah.
know, get some pieces written. So I just yeah, I've Carl has his piano music, but I'm still working on the electronics for this piece that we're doing next week called it's called Glacial Fading, and it uses it's kind of tragic, but it uses underwater recordings of the Arctic icebergs melting. And it's these hours of footage that this geophysicist made. His name is Oscar Glowacki, and he analyzes how fast the ice caps are melting through the sound. Um, so he brings all these hydrophones and records them, and it's a beautiful sound. If you didn't know what it was, it sounds like running water and bubbles and white noise. And I contacted him, and he's given me like full permission to use them. So yeah, so that's for piano and electronics next week. And I just finished a violin and cello duo for West Cork Chamber Music Festival, which is an amazing festival that happens every summer in Ireland. But again, because of the pandemic, they're commissioning some new work for online concerts. So we're actually going to film it in Paris, in this building that I'm in. On a residency at the Centre Culturel Irlandais for 4 months, and there's a beautiful old library with like books that are 600 years old. So we're going to do a nice video in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's what I've been working on. And September I wrote a piece for flute and cello for Jeffrey Ziegler and Alison Loggins Hull for National Soda. So we're filming that this weekend as well.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I love all the it's so funny. I'm still getting used to it and it makes so much sense. I've written this, and instead of like I've written this and the premiere is here, it's like I've written this and we're filming it, which is
Yeah,
totally it's like totally where we're at too. It's like, oh, this new project's happened. We're filming it with whatever,
yeah.
it's kind of wild. Yeah.
Like, don't know when anything's going to be in
Yeah.
person, but we
Yeah.
may as well just, it's better to accept it. And I think there's some really exciting creative stuff happening.
Totally. It's not
Online.
all yeah, it's not all bad. I mean, yeah, I so miss experiencing music together with people, and playing music for people.
Yeah.
But actually it was actually on one of these podcasts, Elijah Smith, he's a composer at Princeton now. He's really interesting guy and wrote some great music for percussion that was on one of these Brooklyn Bounds. And he was like, yeah, you know what? I mean, like, well, let me just, because for me, I've thought like, okay, well, classical music is like chamber music, is kind of like an in the room kind of vibe. But a
Yeah.
lot of the music I make is like, tracking for people and things that are produced. And so
Mhm.
let me go over and think about music that way, and he was like, yeah, I know what you mean. But like, of all these important pieces for myself, that were classical music pieces, I haven't really heard many of them live. Like I've learned about all that music through recording also, and you're like, oh yeah, right. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you think about whatever important symphonic literature is to you, or opera
Yeah.
literature, like unless you're a super like season ticket holder at some big urban center opera house, it's not like you've seen them. So actually, I don't know. I had to rethink that. I was like, oh right. It's not even really that our classical chamber music lineage is, I mean, live is wonderful, but so
Yeah.
much of what we've learned about has been through recording. So I don't know. There'll be so much recorded work coming out of this time, that
Yeah.
I mean, there's something
So
positive.
interesting to think of it like that. I think for us as composers and musicians, like we just want to be in the same room as people, and
Yeah.
that back and forth of collaboration that's definitely something I'm missing a lot. But I love that point that actually for decades we've all been experiencing music through recording anyway.
Yeah, it was a good reset for me. I had just kind of totally taken
Yeah.
it for granted. Like I had not seen that side of it at all,
Yeah.
This maybe leads me to, if you've been counting, this is technically our fourth question. So we're getting we're over the hump. But well, I've been thinking I feel like, actually in the last 4 years, like really since since Trump was elected in 2016, I feel like when we've toured, um, I've thought about ourselves as more and more of a live group, because I felt like it's so important for people to get together in a space and have a shared experience, like at a time when like nobody is agreeing on
Mhm.
facts or like ways to communicate or discuss things. It's like
Yeah.
shared experience becomes so important. And so we've kind of been thinking about ourselves in so many ways as a live band. But then just thinking about, what it means to be an artist right now during COVID quarantine moments, in the States. And you were here, I guess you left in March, but just in terms of a Black Lives Matter consciousness that's, made its way from the Black community, who obviously has been thinking about that for a lot longer than the contemporary
Yeah.
music white led male community, but just this like this bigger conversation that's happening in our community with Black Lives Matter and COVID. And then, it all, I think Trump is about to be gone. There's been a new election, like just
Yeah.
thinking about what it means to be an artist in this moment. I think you alluded to your practice has been changing, but like how have you been thinking about yourself as an artist in this moment that's just different than at least any other that we've experienced?
Yeah. I love that question. And now I'm
Do
going.
you? Yeah, I know exactly.
Um, I guess I've been realizing, when COVID first started, and I was just watching all of my freelance friends lose their work overnight, like months and months of work and just disappearing. It was just heartbreaking, and I was realizing just, I think I saw some tweet that was widely shared of like who's going through lockdown without movies and music and books, and yet the arts are still not sort of widely respected as a career a lot of the time, and we have to beg for funding. Like, I don't know a single artist whose life isn't about funding applications, or like who's managed to avoid that. Like, it's such a big part
Yeah,
of what
yeah,
we have to do. So just kind of holding on to why it's so important. And being here, I've kind of been like in Paris, I've been in sort of these four walls, just creating a lot without much back and forth. So there are times of not feeling like I'm part of a community, or that I don't know. So like
yeah,
just wanting to exploring, like, how do you be like a really positive force in the force is too extreme, but like, do something really positive in the community. And um with the Black Lives Matter in June and July, also thinking about my own education, and how inherently like white supremacy is like so much part of our education, and the education that I'm still part of, and like thinking about, I haven't been teaching this semester, but kind of thinking forward of how to start like remedying that.
yeah,
And I don't have my own ensemble or festival, but if ever it's important that everybody sort of looks at what music they're, even just what music you're absorbing, even if you're not programming or something, just like the music you're even listening to just make sure that you're listening to music from everybody.
yeah. I actually, in a strange way, I feel lucky to I don't know. I haven't thought through this sentence. This may sound wrong, but I feel lucky to have kids right now because I'm trying to distill these ideas
Yeah.
for like a 7 and 9-year-old girl
Yeah.
who are very thoughtful and want to talk about this. But in thinking about what books we have on our bookshelves and what music we're listening to as a family and what movies we're watching, is like a great um, I don't know, trying to be a leader to these two little people,
Yeah. Yeah.
almost feels like it distills these things that I should be thinking about as a
Yeah.
Christian in this community and all those kind of things. But I was just thinking that, I mean, I haven't played much George Lewis music at all, but I've been reading so much more of his written work now, because he's been
Mm.
such a thoughtful voice in this
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter conversation within contemporary music. It's I imagine your studies at Columbia, this thought I imagine came up before June in terms of at least the way George works in the department and the resources and thoughts he's brought to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had transferred into Columbia from a different program that I was really unhappy in. And when I moved to Columbia, just George has been doing so much for even just making the community so diverse. And that is such a critical place to start. Like, if your own community is just all white and all male and all cisgendered, like,
Mm.
what what difference does it make what you're studying if like you're still surrounded by just people that look exactly like you,
Yeah.
and have had, really similar experiences. So just that alone was such a breath of fresh air when I just walked through the door. Um, and certainly in curriculums and in like all of our guest speakers, it's always such a huge part of um, of our program at Columbia, which I think a lot of schools still have a long way to go. Um, and it's something I think George and others are doing like a really good job at Columbia. It's not, I don't think anywhere is perfect.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
But
Yeah.
the composition department, I really, I'm sort of so grateful to be part of it.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Um, well, the last question, we're going out on a lighter note, or at least at a less something cerebral note. Um, just thinking, these, I've actually really loved these kinds of concerts, these Brooklyn Bound concerts, where it's so weird to get together on YouTube, but when you're not getting together anywhere else and everybody, is kind of chatting and experiencing something together, I'm actually really grateful for it right now. But also so much missing the idea of getting in a room and sharing music with people. So um, I know for So as a touring group, I've said in these kind of interviews so many times that, like, when you're in the van and you're driving from one city to the next, you're kind of like sharing the stories of what went right on that concert and oftentimes what went wrong, or the crazy things that happened in any given time. These kind of like concert stories that become a certain life force in a fun way and a positive way. What's a pre-COVID concert experience that you remember as a really meaningful experience, whether it was you know some transcendental performance that happened, for two people in a coffee shop, or whether it was, some awesome, on stage at the big concert hall and wherever, or like whatever, the fun one or the amazing one, or some concert experience you could share, or a couple if you like.
As a composer or just like as an audience?
Oh, maybe anything, but I guess I was thinking with your practice, but
Um, there's so many.
yeah, I know, right?
Um, I'm going back to Bang and a Can again because it was so many years ago, but when I wrote this big piece for that festival, at the time I was almost thinking I didn't really see how I was going to continue composing. I had been out of school for a while. I wasn't working actively with a ton of musicians in Hong Kong. I was like teaching English like 6 days a week. Um, and I couldn't believe I even got into the festival. And then when I did, I really think that was like the moment where it turned things around. And it really gave me the confidence to think like I can actually do this. And the piece I wrote for that festival was all kind of about Hong Kong as a place, and it was really sort of chaotic, and everyone had a household object that they could like interrupt. So there was like an element of freedom in that piece as well, where it was all like pretty strictly notated, but they could improvise with this one random household object whenever they wanted to. And it was very like cacophonous, and I was just so proud. And I just working with these musicians who were incredible. Nick Fotinos was the conductor. And I was so aware, I had been aware of his work for years with Eighth Blackbird. And yeah, it just kind of gave me the push that I think I really, really needed at the time to sort of keep going.
That's
So it
amazing.
was like kind of a really early one in my career, but it really stands out as just the moment where I was like, I can do this. This can be my life.
That's huge. It's like, it feels like sliding door moment kind of thing, or just like, like this is a really important moment that
Yeah.
you went here, but if you didn't have that kind of positive experience, that's amazing. That's where, what was, so was it on the marathon in the big, what's the big Mass Mocha room? Was that
Yeah, in
the
what's that hall called? But yeah,
whatever? Yeah,
that big theater. Not
awesome.
the marathon. At that point, I don't know what they're doing these days, but the composers had a concert like just like a few days before the marathon.
Oh, cool.
So it was like all the 10 composers would have their pieces done
Awesome.
on like a separate night.
Nice. That sounds amazing. I we haven't been able to really hang out at Banglewood so much. Our thing happens pretty much the same time.
Yeah.
Back before we started our thing, I remember going up. There was a big marathon. I think it was
Mhm,
the first time I had met Louis Andreessen and just heard a ton of stuff, and always heard the marathons in New York, of course, but hadn't been up
mhm.
for that vibe. It's just such a special place too. I mean,
Yeah.
Massimoka is beautiful, and um, just the
Yeah,
whole
it's
area, those
beautiful. I
mountains.
managed to go back a few times. They did a piece of mine again at the marathon there, and I was, like, in Ireland for it, so, like, someone, like, Skyped me in
Yeah,
or the days of Zoom, but I don't know,
yeah, yeah.
FaceTime or something. I was, like, enjoying it from Ireland.
Oh, how cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And when you think of more, give me a call. I just love hearing about cool concert experiences these days. We're all
Yeah, it's been it's been a while.
yearning for them. But like I said, I've actually been so surprised at how wonderful it is to just know that it's great. I love putting things out online and just having people watch them whenever they can. But the idea that everybody gets together to experience something together has been really cool. So this show is happening on November 12th. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And in addition to Falling Flames, so is doing a set of some pieces of mine with a bunch of guests, which will be really fun. And this amazing beatboxer, breath artist, vocal percussionist, Shodake Talaferro is doing a set. And actually, Bang on a Can alumnus, as well as Soci alum, Suyun Lia, is going to be playing Hegum. Going to be playing some music of hers, as well as some Michael Gordon music. So it's a really fun night. So everybody should come out if you can stay awake. Finola, we would love to have you on the YouTube hang. So I'll see you then.
Great, see you then. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having this conversation. Take it easy.
Of course, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.